Crown Palace possessed more than half of the world's wealth and influence. Many leaders of countries around the world were members. The palace was powerful, but they kept a low profile. Because they worked behind the scenes, the public thought of them as a legendary existence. A majority of members kept their identities on the down low, adding to the organization's secretive image. Crown Palace had a very strict hierarchy. For example, Andrew Hendricks, the hidden tycoon in New York City, was so influential that he could turn the city upside down if he wanted to. In his eyes, Loomis Hotel, the Golden Triangle, and the 51 royal families were insignificant. When they antagonized Stephen, Andrew hadn't stepped in because he was only a subordinate of the outer circle. He was someone with an insignificant status. As for the members of Crown Palace, their profiles were blank. No one knew where they came from. They went by code names, and only their positions in the palace were known. Below the Grand Palace Master, the 5 guardians had the highest status. They were the core existences of the palace. The Northern Guardian was responsible for training and overseeing the warriors of the palace. Their numbers were like the trees in a dense forest. As one of the strongest martial artists in the organization, the Northern Guardian had the capability to take down a partial Grand Master in a single move. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that even Castile wouldn't be able to withstand 3 moves from him. The Southern Guardian was responsible for providing support. He frequently lent his assistance to the other members, including the leaders of countries. The Western Guardian was in charge of finances. Crown Palace possessed enough wealth to contend with the world's wealthiest tycoons. Back then, one particularly wealthy family with a net worth of $100 billion targeted Texas and attempted to create a financial crisis that would sweep the country. The Western Guardian interfered, forcing them to return empty-handed while suffering heavy losses. The Eastern Guardian was responsible for strategizing. It wasn't as simple as it sounded. It involved gathering with the world's wisest and most intelligent people. Crown's palace representative could be considered the leader. All large-scale operations of the palace had to be reviewed by the Eastern Guardian before they were set in motion. The Central Guardian wasn't at the base in the desert. He was responsible for daily operations at the headquarters. The Northern, Western, Eastern, and Southern Guardians were the only ones at the base because Stephen had asked them to stay shortly after he became the Grand Palace Master. First, their presence would add an extra line of defense to the United States as backup forces. And second, they could monitor the prison of fiends. Stephen had never requested the 4 Guardians to step in, not even when Devil Hall attacked a second time. The 4 Guardians had followed Stephen's instructions and built a small town in the middle of the desert and used it as a base for communications between the United States and Europe. Crown Palace had eyes all over the world. The 4 Guardians knew what had happened to Stephen in Annapolis, but the palace had always adhered to the principle of secrecy. They rarely got involved in public affairs, even if it was serious enough to shake a country. There were only 2 ways to make Crown Palace appear in public. The first method required both the previous and current Grand Palace Masters to take out their palace tokens at the same time. However, most of the palace masters either disappeared after handing over their position or met an untimely death. None of the palace masters had ever met the requirements to utilize this method. The second method was for the current Grand Palace Master to issue an order to one of the 5 Guardians. According to this rule, the Palace Master had to be there in person. Issuing an order remotely would be considered invalid. Without the Palace Master's permission, the 5 Guardians were not allowed to show themselves in public. The 4 Guardians had to remain on the sidelines even after discovering what had happened to Stephen because of these strict rules. When Kylan's 4 students first informed Stephen that his nationality would be revoked and that he'd be kicked out of the country, his first thought was to come here and meet with the 4 Guardians. With his presence and position, he would have the authority to make the palace surface after years of staying hidden. Initially, with Eventide alone, the chances of making it here were slim. But at that crucial moment, Mateo and the others had come to his aid. It was only because of their sacrifices that Stephen had been able to make it here. The Northern Guardian was seething. "If you give me permission, I'll get rid of those scumbags who plotted against you." Guilt flickered in Stephen's eyes. "Many people sacrificed themselves for me today. I won't let their deaths be in vain. Whether it's those scheming on stage or those working behind the scenes, I'll drag each and every single one of them out into the open and avenge my people." "Are you planning on revealing the palace's existence?" "Yes. The palace has been hiding for too long. Barely anyone knows about us." The four guardians exchanged excited glances. They'd been waiting for this day. But given the influence that the palace possessed, revealing its existence would shock the world. It would be dangerous. Neither of them knew how the world would react to Hellcrown Palace. Even so, this was an opportune moment to rewrite their status as a legend and materialize into reality. As they were instructed, the four guardians passed on Stephen's order. "Mr. Adams, we've made preparations. Soon, the palace's existence will begin to spread across the world." "Well done," Stephen said. "It's time for me to prepare my counterattack." "About the poison in you," the Eastern Guardian began. The palace's intelligence network was under his command, and he could monitor any event around the world, whether it was in the past or the present. But he hadn't been able to obtain substantial information on Devil Hall. The only piece of information he'd found was about the poison that had been used against Stephen. The founder of Devil Hall had conducted research on a pre-existing poison and modified it for years to make it more lethal. He'd sacrificed the left envoy of light just to poison Stephen. The other three guardians' faces fell at the reminder. Devil Hall's poison didn't have an antidote. Stephen would have no other choice but to wait for his death. Stephen laughed at their expressions. "Why are you all frowning like that? It's like you're preparing yourselves to mourn for me. I'm not dead." It hadn't been that long since he'd become the Grand Palace Master, but the five of them had already grown close. He'd even given them nicknames. The Northern Guardian, Nor, the Western Guardian, Wes, the Eastern Guardian, Aston, and the Southern Guardian, Sorav. The four guardians looked even more dejected after Stephen's teasing. "Even if it takes 1,000-year-old ginseng or a snow lotus to get rid of the poison, I'll hike up the mountains and pick them for you," Aston said resolutely. Stephen smiled in amusement. "A 1,000-year-old ginseng and a snow lotus aren't necessary. Actually, the poison has already been removed." The four guardians' eyes widened in disbelief. "What? When did that happen?" The founder of Devil Hall had painstakingly researched and developed that poison for years. How could it be removed so easily? "It's the truth. When I went to Annapolis not too long ago, I paid a visit to Dr. Sloan. His acquaintances are one of the best in the medical field. I learned a lot about ancient medicine from them. After I was poisoned, I used what they taught me, and along with my techniques, I gradually expelled the poison. I'm fine now." The four guardians brightened. "As expected of the Grand Palace Master, you achieved the unthinkable." Back when the previous Palace Master chose to pass on the position to Stephen, many of the higher-ups disagreed. Among them were the five guardians, but not anymore. They wholeheartedly believed that he deserved the position. "It wasn't because of my skills alone," Stephen said. "Ancient medicine played a huge role. I wouldn't have been able to recover so quickly without it." Wes nodded in understanding. Ancient medicine is known to be profound. Nor was still worried. "Mr. Adams, let me check on your condition." As a skilled martial artist of the palace, he was very proficient in medicine. "Sure." Nor was astonished after examining Stephen's condition. "Not only is the poison gone, but your inner energy is also as deep as the ocean. When you make a full recovery, you'll be stronger than before." The other three guardians' smiles widened. Nor was credible. He couldn't have made a mistake. With Stephen as the Grand Palace Master, Hellcrown Palace would be invincible. "I'll recover eventually, but treat me like I'm dead." The four guardians froze. "Why?" Nor asked in confusion. Stephen didn't answer and looked at Aston instead. "You know what I mean, right?" Understanding crossed Aston's face. He informed the other guardians about Stephen's plan. Stephen watched in approval, as expected of the Eastern Guardian, who was in charge of strategizing. It had only taken him a second to catch on. The four of them dispersed and got to work. As for Stephen, he gave Kim a call to let her know that he'd made it. The town was isolated from civilization. It looked nothing like one of the palace's bases. There was no signal in the desert, but with the palace's network, it would only take a few minutes to communicate with the outside world. Their call wouldn't be detected either. Kim had been waiting anxiously at home the entire time. She never strayed far from her phone and made sure that it was charged. She couldn't risk missing Stephen's call. She finally relaxed when she heard his voice over the phone. "Have you arrived?" "Yes, I'm here. You don't have to worry about me. It's a safe place. But soon, news about my death will circulate. Don't be alarmed. It's fake. It'll serve as bait to lure the mastermind out of hiding. I'll have to ask you and Mom to keep this a secret for me." Kim and Stephen had been through a lot together. She trusted his decisions. "Don't worry, our lips are sealed. We'll be fine since we know you're alive and safe. Do what you have to do. We'll support you in any way we can." Silas and his subordinates were waiting near the prison of fiends for news from Alistair. Something's not right. With their numbers and abilities, they should have gotten rid of Stephen a long time ago. It's been several hours. Why haven't they returned? "How about we send someone to check on the situation?" one of his subordinates asked. Just as Silas was about to take his suggestion, another subordinate came running. "There's been an update. Stephen and his escorts are dead, but they were tenacious and put up a decent fight. All the prisoners died in battle." Silas was surprised to hear that more than 10,000 prisoners had been wiped out, but they were none of his concern. The most important thing was that Stephen was dead. What about Alistair? Before they separated, Alistair was in the partial Grand Master realm. He might have broken through during the battle and become a full-fledged Martial Grand Master. Having someone like him among the island state's troops would be a valuable addition. "No one knows where he is," his subordinate replied. "He disappeared after the battle." "It's fine as long as he's not dead. Maybe he ran off after killing Stephen because he didn't want to work for us. He'll probably try to find another way to get rid of the poison. It won't be easy. Warhawk spent decades developing that poison." "Should we find him and dispose of him?" "No. He was imprisoned for many years. Let's let him enjoy his freedom. When we need him one day, we'll get him back." On another note, the previous commander-in-chief is finally dead. Spread the word of his death and let the whole world know about it. With that, Silas returned to the island state. That night, he and the other higher-ups celebrated to their heart's content. His prestige among the Alliance soared. News of the previous commander-in-chief's death at the hands of the S-class criminal, Alistair, spread across the world. Many organizations had been lying low because of Stephen. Now that he was dead, they were free to wreak havoc. The creator of the International Underworld Organization Assassin List, Jan, sighed as he monitored the commander-in-chief's bounty. It was unfortunate that Stephen had been killed by Alistair of all people. He could have won if he was in peak condition. Stephen had defeated Castile once before, and he was a martial Grand Master. It was clear that Alistair had taken advantage of Stephen's disability to gain the upper hand. It's a shame that no one knows where Alistair is. He could have accepted the $100 billion reward, and I would have received at least $10 billion in commission. "Mobilize our people and search for Alistair," Jan instructed his subordinates. News of the commander's death stirred up a wave of public opinion in the United States. The people were divided into two main groups. One group consisted of loyal fans of the commander-in-chief. They'd never given up on him, not even when he was accused of being a traitor and kicked out of the country. They passionately defended his name. The other group consisted of biased citizens who exaggerated the rumors. They criticized him on a daily basis like their lives depended on it. Several royal families in New York City and many other upper-class families were delighted by Stephen's death. They'd been displeased after being forced to submit to him. At the Addams family's residence, Terrence was grinning when he received the news. I told him that he would die after crossing the border. Laurel threw herself in front of Johan's memorial tablet. Did you hear that, Johan? That monster who killed you is dead. I couldn't take revenge for you, but at least he met a miserable end. You're right, Laurel. Even if Johan was killed, he died during a fight with the commander-in-chief. His defeat was valiant, unlike Stephen's. The same scene was playing out at the Phoenix family's residence. Mansell, in particular, was gloating over Stephen's death. The other Beaumont families in Annapolis had varying reactions. News traveled fast and reached Kylan's mansion. Shortly after Stephen crossed the border, he was attacked and killed by Alistair, Kingsley reported. Kylan didn't have a reaction. That's none of my concern. You didn't have to report that to me. His students looked at each other before nodding. Understood. Victoria was shocked when she read the news. Calm down, Mom, Kim said. Remember what Stephen said yesterday? He's fine. Victoria took a deep breath. Yes, you're right. He's safe. Kim held her hand to comfort her. We need to pretend like we're devastated. I know. I was just taken aback to see his death all over the news. If he didn't call us yesterday, I would have never believed it. Let's be patient. He'll come back to us one day. Victoria smiled. You're right. The two of them looked forward to the day Stephen returned. At the palace's base in the desert, Stephen received news that his death had spread across the world and caused a huge stir, resulting in several countries overseas being attacked by numerous organizations that had been lying low when he was around. Of course, this was a lie. Aston had come up with an elaborate story to confuse the enemy. It wouldn't be easy to discern the truth from the lies. The only fact they could be certain of was Stephen's death. All right, my death has caused a huge commotion as planned, Stephen said to Aston. Next, Nor and Wes's preparations will shock the world. Hellcrown Palace will finally be making an appearance. Wes swept through the wealthiest tycoons in the world with a thunderous momentum. He'd taken their wealth in the name of Hellcrown Palace. On that day, some of the wealthiest bank accounts to exist experienced a drastic change in their balance. All the funds flowed to one mysterious account. Nor, who was skilled in martial arts, suppressed the antagonistic organizations overseas that were rearing their heads after Stephen's death. And that wasn't all. Famous families, financial groups, underworld organizations, and more pledged their allegiance to Hellcrown Palace. Their existence soared to the top of the headlines across the world. Its sudden appearance put them in the spotlight. The public's attention shifted to the palace, an organization that they had once thought was only a legend. There used to be rumors that Hellcrown Palace and Devil Hall were the same organization because they were both so mysterious. These rumors had vanished now that Hellcrown Palace had established itself as a standalone organization. The public started discussing the palace's background. Hellcrown Palace appearing so suddenly couldn't have been a coincidence. First, the commander-in-chief wiped out Devil Hall. Second, Kylan defeated the commander in a duel. Third, the commander was killed in the desert. Now Hellcrown Palace is trending. If you ask me, they've always been around. It's just that they've been keeping a low profile. They must have planned for this moment. The higher-ups of the Alliance sought Silas's opinion when Hellcrown Palace took the world by storm. They hadn't expected such a big event to come up right after killing Stephen. Mr. Silas, what kind of organization is Hellcrown Palace? Wasn't it an organization that only existed in legends? That's just a lie to scare people. They were probably afraid of Stephen. He defeated our alliance of 40 countries 6 years ago and became the nightmare of every underworld organization. He even took down the formidable Devil Hall twice. Hellcrown Palace was waiting for an opportunity to make themselves known. Now that Stephen was dead, the palace is taking the opportunity to get their name out there. Silas's analysis reassured the higher-ups. There was nothing to worry about if Hellcrown Palace had once been wary of Stephen. One of them expressed his doubts. That may be the case, but it's clear that their goal is to rise to the top. It took so many famous families, financial groups, and organizations. That alone is proof of their influence. What's stopping them from targeting us? Their concerns returned tenfold. Stephen had been a thorn in the Alliance's side for as long as they could remember, but Hellcrown Palace was an unknown variable. Silas assumed the role of placating the growing tension. Don't panic, everyone. From the direction the palace is taking, they're mainly targeting Europe and Warhawk. We're safe for the time being. The tension in the room let up slightly. As you said, this is only temporary. How can we guarantee that none of us will be targeted in the long run? That's simple, Silas replied. While their attention is elsewhere, we'll seize the opportunity and investigate their background. Then we'll get them on our side. The higher-ups were skeptical. How were they supposed to get the legendary Hellcrown Palace on their side? Sounds like a pipe dream, doesn't it? Silas continued. But think about it. Who devised the plan to take down the previous commander-in-chief? It was you, someone said, ready to flatter him. Many others responded. Silas shook his head. No, the commander's death was largely due to Devil Hall's plan. It was because they sacrificed the left envoy of light to poison him. If it weren't for them, no one would be able to take him down. But why were they so willing to cooperate with us? The higher-up who was quick to flatter him before was the first to speak again. It was you! This time, Silas didn't refuse. You're right, he agreed with a smile. If I was able to get an aggressive, violent, and mysterious organization like Devil Hall to work with us, I'll have a way to deal with Hellcrown Palace too. He already had a general idea as to how to get the palace on their side. If they had both Devil Hall and the palace in their grasp, it would be equivalent to having the world's two most influential organizations at their disposal. Kylan had also heard about Hellcrown Palace. Where did the palace come from? There are rumors that they're superior to Devil Hall. Their name made the headlines when they subdued various powerful factions across the world, Kingsley explained. In that regard, their influence is above Devil Hall's. The palace's sudden appearance reminds me of when Stephen took on the position of the commander-in-chief after the war, Kylan said. Stephen's dead. It's impossible for him to be involved. Besides, it's normal for organizations like the palace to rise up to the top out of the blue. Remember when you became the new commander? You rose to fame after launching multiple sneak attacks overseas. Kylan gave it some thought. That's true. If the palace is above Devil Hall, like the rumors say, then if I took them down, wouldn't that place my achievements ahead of Stephen's? Of course it would, his 4 students answered in unison. You won against Stephen in a duel and became the commander-in-chief. But there are some people who don't think you're suited for the position, Kingsley said. They say your military exploits can't be compared to Stephen's. If you take the palace down, it'll be an achievement that will shake the world. No one would dare question you after that. Kylan understood that as well. He'd won the position fair and square, but he hadn't earned it through his military contributions. Most of the general public was on his side, but a small minority was still against him. I'll make them understand sooner or later. Stephen did win against the Alliance and Devil Hall twice, but if it weren't for his subordinates, who knows what the outcome would have been? Kingsley agreed. The 4 great generals are each formidable opponents on their own. Not to mention, the Armored Cavalry Battalion, Fenrir Division, and 18 Guards are the elites of the military. The credit can't be given to Stephen alone. Arlet, Raksha, and Constant joined in. Without his subordinates, he's nothing. He even lost to you in a duel. That explains why he kept refusing your challenge for so many years. It's because he knew that he wouldn't be able to win alone. I pity his subordinates, Kylan said regretfully. After their duel in front of the Addams family's mansion, he'd begun to question the strength that Stephen had displayed. It didn't seem to meet the criteria to be a leader, especially not when his subordinates were much more skilled. For example, Zachary had never lost a battle since his debut. His martial arts were the most advanced among the 4 great generals. There was a rumor if he and Zachary fought, the battle would end in a draw. Although it was only a rumor, it was enough to show how powerful Zachary was. Aside from the 4 great generals, there was also the Armored Cavalry Battalion, Fenrir Division, 18 Guards, and so on. They were all elites. Moreover, many of the current military base commanders had once been Stephen's direct subordinates. Ever since Kylan took over the position of commander-in-chief, he'd been eager to recruit them to his side. In particular, the 4 great generals. But the 4 of them were adamant about opposing him. To them, there would only ever be one commander-in-chief, and that was Stephen. The more they acted up, the more Kylan wanted to subdue them. He couldn't deny that they brought out his competitive side. Kingsley knew what was going through Kylan's mind. It won't be easy to make the 4 great generals listen to you. Kingsley shot Arlett, Roxa, and Constant a look, signaling for someone to back him up. Raksha took over. It's because they're only loyal to one person, just like us. If Stephen had asked us to switch sides, we would have refused because you're our only leader. Kylan scoffed. If they just gave me a chance, I could show them just how impressive I am compared to Stephen. There was nothing more Raksha could say because Kylan was being stubborn. She decided to change the subject. Either way, the only thing Stephen had going for him was his decent background, although he was an illegitimate child. Kingsley and Arlett looked at each other and chuckled. Raksha was at a loss. What's so funny? Did I say something wrong? Constant also looked confused. You did, Kingsley said with a laugh. Do you really think the Addams family is at the top of the country? Is that not the case? Raksha asked. You and Constant joined us a little later, so you don't know Mr. Gale's background, Arlett explained. That's why you think the Addams family's all that. To be honest, whether they're royal, imperial, or Beaumont families, they're just forces on the surface. They're nothing but fancy titles compared to our teacher. Raksha and Constant listened attentively. They were curious as to who or what could top the #1 family in the United States. The true powerhouses in our country are hidden. They rarely appear in public because there's nothing they can't have. Let's just say that Mr. Gale is from a hidden family that the Addams family can never compete with. Roxa and Constant never knew that Kylan had such an influential background. From Arlett's explanation, they realized that the Addams family was #1 only in name. Although the hidden circles above them were out of their league, they stayed out of the public eye so no one was aware of their existence. Roxa and Constant had always thought that Kylan was impressive. Now, they admired him as their teacher even more. Kylan didn't say anything. He watched them with a smile, letting their imaginations run wild. They were interrupted by the sound of footsteps in an orderly fashion outside the mansion. It sounded like a large group of soldiers. Kylan frowned. There's no military order today. Why are so many of them outside? Raksha, who had just learned of Kylan's influential background, volunteered. I'll go out and see what's going on. Let's go with her, Kylan said, watching her hurry out the door. The 5 of them left the house and went to the gates. They were stunned by the scene before them. It was the 4 great generals. Behind them were the Armored Cavalry Battalion, Fenrir Division, 18 Guards, and more. They were dressed in uniform, and their gazes were unnervingly locked on them. Dennis, Rosalind, Zachary, Jaden, what's the meaning of this? Kingsley demanded. Are you leading an army to surround the mansion? Is this your attempt to rebel? Kylan was displeased, but he didn't let it show. He kept his face expressionless and released his aura. Dennis, what do you want? You should be aware that without a military order, leading an army is an act of rebellion. Zachary took a step forward and unleashed his own aura to compete with his. Kylan frowned slightly. Were they here for a fight? Zachary, don't be rude, Dennis berated. Step back. Only then did Zachary reluctantly withdraw. General Kylan, Kingsley interrupted him. Dennis, watch your words. Mr. Gale is the commander-in-chief now. He's not a general anymore. I apologize, but to me, there is only one commander, Dennis said firmly. If that's the case, then there's nothing more to say, Kingsley replied. Taking into consideration your contributions to the country in the past, I'll give you a chance. Take your troops and leave. If you refuse, then we will consider this a conspiracy and act accordingly. Arlett, Raksha, and Constant returned the numerous stares with a glare. Leave now. Kylan waved his hand, signaling for his 4 students to calm down. Dennis, why are you here? We came for one reason. We want to clear Mr. Adams's name. Clear his name? Yes, he was falsely accused. He didn't betray the country. Jaden came forward. This is a scheme devised by someone behind the scenes. Stephen colluded with the enemy and betrayed the country. This is a fact. You say he was falsely accused, but do you have evidence? Kylan asked. Rosalind walked up to him and held out a document. Yes, we do. Please take a look. This is the evidence that we've put together. Kylan nodded, and Kingsley took the document from Rosalind. Stephen had instructed Dennis to listen to Kylan's orders for the time being and wait for his call, but he never did. News of his death by an S-class criminal made the headlines instead. Dennis had tried to contact Stephen to no avail. He, Rosalind, Zachary, and Jaden had their doubts, but they had no choice but to believe that he was dead. They hadn't been able to do anything for Stephen when he was accused of being a traitor, so the least they could do was restore his reputation in death. Rosalind had been investigating since Stephen was accused. After a thorough and intensive search, she'd compiled a stack of documents that could be used as evidence. But the evidence alone wouldn't be enough. They needed Kylan's approval. Kingsley flipped through the documents and read the contents aloud for Kylan. The evidence included a video of Stephen on the battlefield during the battle with Devil Hall. He took the lead and risked his life for his troops. A traitor who sought fame would never die for his subordinates. There was another video that included surveillance footage of assassins infiltrating the country and targeting Stephen's courtyard. In the face of irrefutable evidence and ironclad facts, Kylan's expression turned serious, and he felt a twinge of guilt. It was my negligence. The events played out too smoothly to be a coincidence. Everything pointed to Stephen being a traitor, so I didn't question it. I heard he barely defended himself when he was accused. However, I don't understand. He was paralyzed after our duel. Why are there still so many people after him? Is it because they can't rest easy until he's dead? General Kylan, that's what makes you different from Mr. Adams, Dennis said. You've always thought that you're above him, but to our enemies overseas, they see him as a bigger threat. The fear remains even if he couldn't move and was restricted to a wheelchair. Even if he was lying in a coffin, they would still be afraid. That made Kylan feel worse. He was the clear winner during their duel. Over 1,000 upper-class families had witnessed his victory with their own eyes, including the Royal, Imperial, and Beaumont families. Not to mention, the Leviathan unit were witness from beginning to end. Stephen had even admitted defeat. The public was divided into 2 parties. One group was on his side, while the other was on Stephen's side. He could live with that if that's all there was to it. But after Stephen was injured, those from overseas sent their people into the country to assassinate him, even though he no longer posed a threat to them. Kylan's expression grew dark as he watched the video flash before his eyes. Did those from overseas think of him as inferior to someone who could no longer fight on the front lines? If Stephen were still alive, I could have proved that I'm more of a threat than him. It's a shame that he's not around anymore. I already came up with a plan to prove that I deserve this position. The only way to get rid of Hellcrown Palace. It was a publicly acknowledged fact that the palace was more influential than Devil Hall. Taking them down would win the public over and demonstrate his capabilities to the hostile forces overseas. We look forward to it, Dennis said. However, we didn't come to discuss who's more of a threat between you and Mr. Adams. The truth has come to light, so we would like to request that you restore Mr. Adams's reputation. He knelt on one knee in front of Kylan. Rosalind, Zachary, and Jaden followed suit. The Armored Cavalry Battalion, Fenrir Division, 18 Guards, and the others did the same. Kylan was taken aback when each and every one of them kneeled in waves. They were commendable soldiers in the army, but they were wild and unruly at heart. They were only loyal to one who had tamed them, and that was Stephen. Under normal circumstances, they would never kneel to someone else. But in order to restore Stephen's reputation, they didn't hesitate to kneel before him. Their cohesive and closely knit mentality was incredible. It made Kylan even more envious of Stephen. With them as subordinates, there would be nothing to fear on the battlefield. Kylan didn't make things difficult for them. It was a fact that Stephen had been framed. With his authority, he could clear his name. Stephen was lucky to have subordinates like you. There's evidence that he was framed. I'll revoke all accusations against him and restore his reputation. Unfortunately, it's a little too late. He's no longer with us. The regret in his voice was sincere. That doesn't matter, Dennis said. Proving his innocence and clearing his name is enough for us. Status isn't important. Even if he's gone, he'll always be the commander-in-chief to us. I'll report to the Supreme Leader and request for him to honor Stephen's death as a hero to our country. Thank you, General Kylan, Dennis replied. No one would question Stephen if the Supreme Leader made it official. Kylan understood that he would never be able to replace Stephen. For the time being, he would let them be. He would slowly win their favor. Once he took down Hellcrown Palace, his name would spread across the world. Dennis and the others would take the initiative to approach him. Stephen wasn't here anymore and no one could replace him, but they would need a new leader. Dennis made another request. Mr. Adams was killed in the desert across the western border. Please allow us to retrieve his body and hold a funeral for him. Kylan nodded. I understand how you feel. You have my permission. I have official business to attend to, so it'll be convenient for me to attend the funeral. Help me make a toast to Stephen. Of course, Dennis said respectfully. The others behind him thanked Kylan in unison. After receiving permission, Dennis, Rosalind, Zachary, and Jaden led the rest away from the mansion and retreated. They rushed to the western border in a hurry to search for Stephen's body. Mr. Adams, I just received news that the 4 great generals under your command and the Armored Cavalry Battalion are in the desert preparing to search for your body, Aston reported. They're planning to hold a funeral for you. Have you made arrangements? Stephen asked. This funeral will convince my enemies that I'm dead. That way, it'll be easier for us to find the mastermind. Understood. Leave everything to me. According to Aston's plan, Dennis and the others were stationed in the desert for 10 days. After an intensive search, they finally found Stephen's body. Aston had prepared a body that resembled Stephen at every angle, so they didn't doubt it. Dennis requested an undertaker to prepare Stephen's body for burial. He was placed in a coffin that had been prepared long ago. Their hearts were heavy as they took off their hats and saluted their leader. He'd left the world much too early. How should we arrange Mr. Adams' funeral? Rosalind asked. Dennis took a deep breath to compose himself. When he was alive, he was the guardian of our country. He died in the desert. This place near the western gate, so we'll bury him here. Maybe his spirit will guard the border. That's a good idea, Jaden said. Mr. Adams is no longer around, so we'll probably be stationed at the border. We can come and visit his grave at any time. What about Miss Kim and Miss Victoria? Rosalind asked. Dennis gave it some thought. I believe they moved back to Washington, D.C. The district is too far from the border. It'll be a long journey. We'll let them know that it won't be convenient for them to attend the funeral. Actually, I'm worried they won't be able to handle it. Me too, Rosalind said quietly. The arrangements were made, and soon Stephen's funeral was underway. Aside from the 4 great generals, the Armored Cavalry Battalion, 18 Guards, and the other troops under Stephen's command, the Western Gatekeeper and many of the military base commanders rushed over. They wanted to see Stephen for the last time and send him off. The large-scale funeral made it the grandest funeral in the history of the military. The Supreme Leader sent the Leviathan unit to express their condolences. A small group was on a mountain peak not too far away from the western border. Stephen and the 4 guardians were watching the funeral from a distance. After the funeral, no one will doubt your death, Aston said. The people who held the funeral for you were your closest subordinates. Yeah, Stephen murmured absent-mindedly as he watched the funeral procession. How does it feel to witness your own funeral? Wes asked. Stephen cast a thoughtful glance in his direction. To be honest, it's a strange feeling to watch my own funeral as an outsider. If I died, I would be free. I wouldn't have to know or care about what comes after. The 4 guardians fell silent, mulling over his words. But it's not time yet. If I died, what would happen to the people I leave behind? And those who sacrificed themselves for me would have done so in vain. I have to survive for their sake and live in their stead. No matter what, you can't die, Mr. Adams, Wes said, his tone serious. If you're gone, what will happen to the country and Hellcrown Palace? Aston cut in. I found some leads that could help us identify the mastermind. It won't take too long to find him. Stephen nodded. Good work. While the world thinks I'm dead, I'll head back to the U.S. to take care of some business. Hellcrown Palace appeared out of nowhere, so the country is suspicious. The 4 guardians spoke up at the same time. We'll go with you. That would be too many people, nor is enough. Stephen planned to keep his grip on the down low. Bringing too many people could expose him. Stephen and the 4 guardians didn't watch the funeral until the end. They left in the middle. The grand funeral attracted the attention of the entire world. No one doubted the authenticity because Stephen's closest subordinates had personally organized the funeral. That was proof that the previous commander of the United States had fallen. The alliance was celebrating for the 2nd time. We can rest easy, Silas said with a smile. The 4 great generals held a funeral for Stephen. His death has been confirmed. Our next goal is to get Hellcrown Palace on our side. They'll be our tool to annex the United States. At the temple's underground palace, the Right Envoy of Light reported the news of the funeral to Raphael. Stephen is dead, and the position of Grand Palace Master is vacant. This is your chance. Raphael glanced at him. Do you really think so? How naive. If Stephen really died, why didn't the 5 guardians have a reaction? Don't you think it's strange? The Right Envoy of Light realized his mistake. What should we do? Lay low, like what we've been doing. Stephen is inexperienced, but getting that position requires more than just luck. We'll have to wait for the right opportunity. At Kylan's mansion, he was watching a video of the funeral procession with his 4 students after wrapping up his duties for the day. Considering Stephen's military achievements, holding a grand funeral for him is appropriate. When it's over, the 4 great generals and the others will return to their posts. I'll have to get them on my side soon. Kingsley, did the Supreme Leader reply? After Dennis and the others left for the western border to search for Stephen's body, Kylan sent a letter to the Supreme Leader, requesting him to give him permission to lead an army to take down Hellcrown Palace. He planned to use this achievement to make Stephen's closest subordinates submit to him. A few people from the Leviathan unit came over this morning. They said that the Supreme Leader wants to tell you not to act rashly. Hellcrown Palace has not made the United States their enemy. If you provoke them without just cause, we'll have one more powerful enemy to add to the list and one less potential ally. Kylan frowned. The Supreme Leader wasn't wrong. It would be inappropriate to make a move before determining whether the palace was a friend or foe. The next day, at the Cassidy family's mansion in Annapolis, Keen ran to Urim's study after receiving urgent news. An assassination order has been issued overseas. The target is Kim's daughter, Valeria. All of a sudden? Urim asked in disbelief. What happened? You might not have heard, but yesterday, the 4 great generals held a funeral for Stephen at the western border. That's confirmation of his death. The organizations overseas that have been suppressed thus far are coming out of hiding. They're targeting Stephen's entire family. Urim cursed. They're insane. Valeria is a child. It can't be helped. They were afraid of Stephen when he was alive. Now that he's dead, their fear has shifted to his daughter. The problem is, how should we handle this? They're merciless. They're not people we can deal with. If the Cassidy family is ruined because of Kim... Urim slammed his fist on the table and stood up. What are you trying to say? Do you want me to give up on her? That's not it. I care about Kim too, but our family can't take on these organizations. The Adams and Phoenix families have been watching us. If we're negatively affected by the assassination order, they'll see it as an opportunity to take us down for good. You have to think about what's really at stake here. Urim clenched his fists. He was reluctant, but for the sake of their family, he could only give up on Kim for the time being. He would have to find an appropriate time to tell her. It wouldn't be an easy discussion. Many upper-class families were thrilled by Stephen's funeral. He really was dead. Derek personally went to Washington, D.C. to pay a visit to Kim and Victoria. You're both here. It doesn't seem like you two were affected by Mr. Adams' death. Kim was surprised to see him after all this time. Is there something you need? Derek didn't stand on ceremony and invited himself in. He took a seat on the couch. I thought you and your husband had a close relationship. You must have heard that the military held a funeral for him yesterday. It's fine if you didn't attend, but you're acting like nothing happened. You don't even look sad. I'm doubtful of your feelings for him. Derek turned to Victoria. And you? Aren't you sad that your son is dead? Did you come here to watch us cry our eyes out? Kim retorted. You came all the way here just to mock us? Victoria added. Of course not. I understand how you feel. He's already dead. What's the point of crying? It's not like he can come back to life, am I right? And? Kim prompted suspiciously. Your husband is dead, but you two have to move on with your lives. Miss Kim, you have a daughter. It won't be easy to raise her on your own. Someone should take care of you, and that someone can be me. Derek's goal was simple. He wanted the huge business behind Kim. When Stephen left to deal with Devil Hall, her career had developed rapidly. Both the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation had become nationwide enterprises. In addition to the support from the Cassidy family in Annapolis, her business was flourishing. She'd built a business empire that belonged to her, and her personal wealth could be ranked among the top in the entire country. That level of wealth was irresistible. If Derek could take Kim's assets, the economic strength of the Naylor family would soar. That would solidify his position in the family. With the assassination order in place from overseas, her assets would be divided sooner or later. Rather than wait for that to happen, he might as well make the first move and seize her assets for himself. Kim was disgusted by his attitude. There's no need for that. I don't need anyone to take care of me. If there's nothing else, please leave. Derek didn't make any move to get up. He crossed his legs. Miss Kim, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. Mr. Adams is dead. The world across the ocean wants to get rid of his family. In particular, your adorable daughter. Kim looked at Valeria in concern. Don't think the Cassidy family will protect you. Mr. Urim just announced that he'll be putting some distance between you and his family. You're not his adoptive daughter anymore. Kim was doubtful. Why all of a sudden? Her phone rang just as Derek was about to respond. It was Urim. To ensure the Cassidy family's survival, he had no choice but to announce that their father-daughter relationship was over. He told her to be careful before hanging up. Kim was too stunned to speak. When the Adams and Phoenix families joined hands after their duel, Urim protected her and Stephen. He wasn't afraid of them. But this time, he'd chosen to take a step back, which could only mean that the opponent was too strong for him to handle. Valeria is so young, Victoria said. Why are they going through such lengths to kill a child? Because the way they think is different from us, Derek answered confidently. They believe in a thorough extermination. Valeria is young now, but she'll grow up eventually. She's Mr. Adams's daughter, and they're afraid she'll turn out to be like him. It wasn't easy for them to get rid of Mr. Adams. They don't want to see another him in the future. If you came all the way here just to tell us this, I'm guessing you have a solution prepared? Kim said. If I didn't have a way out, I wouldn't have come. Even my adoptive father had to step back. He's the head of the third-ranked family in the country. You're a member of an imperial family. What can you do that he can't? Derek shrugged. It's true that we're only an imperial family, but just because a Beaumont family can't do anything about it doesn't mean that we can't. Truth be told, he had no plan. As Kim had said, they were only an imperial family. How could they solve a problem that even a Beaumont family couldn't? He was only here for her business. He didn't care about her daughter. Derek could tell that Kim still had her doubts. He tried to persuade her again. I hope you can understand that even Mr. Urim has cut ties with you. You and your family are in a dangerous situation. Kim knew that Stephen was still alive, but he was far away. They didn't know when the assassins would come, and even if they did, he couldn't fight them off as he had in the past. He would be putting himself in danger if he came back. And he was lying low right now. He couldn't risk exposing himself. To protect Valeria, she could only rely on herself. But she wasn't a fighter. Their enemy was so powerful that even Urim had to retreat. Was Derek her only option? Derek watched Kim's expression closely, trying to figure out what she was thinking. She wasn't saying anything, so this matter was probably almost settled. He decided to add fuel to the fire. Miss Kim, I hope you can make a decision as soon as possible. Once word gets out, assassins around the world will be rushing here to dispose of your daughter. But I know you need time to think. He looked at his watch before standing up. I have to go back to Annapolis tomorrow. My flight is at 8 o'clock in the morning, so you have tonight to think about it. I'll be waiting for your answer. Without waiting for a response, Derek walked out the door. He was confident that he'd succeeded. Kim would definitely contact him tomorrow morning. After Derek left, Kim received a call from Celeste. After a series of unforeseen events, they had become good friends. Ever since Stephen left the country, Celeste would call from time to chat. I heard assassins from overseas have entered the country. They're targeting your daughter. Be careful. That made Kim even more worried. Celeste's call that she had made out of the goodness of her heart had inadvertently helped Derek. It pressured Kim into making a decision as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Stephen and Nora returned to the United States without attracting any attention. The moment they set foot in the country, they received a message from Aston. An assassination order has been issued overseas. Your daughter is their target. They plan to eliminate the root of the problem to prevent her from growing up and becoming like you. Quite a few assassins have already infiltrated the country. A cold glint flickered in Stephen's eyes. These people were detestable. They wouldn't leave him alone, even when they thought he was dead. His phone buzzed with another message. What's strange is that the order originated from overseas, but it spread faster in the U.S. We have reason to believe that the person who issued the order is the same person who tried to sabotage you. Stephen sent a reply. The person behind this is most likely Mr. Chevalier. He put his phone away and turned to Noor. Our first stop is Washington, D.C. We have to make sure Kim and Valeria are safe. Understood. The day passed in a flash. Kim laid awake in bed at midnight. She couldn't sleep. After Celeste's call, she'd received multiple calls from people claiming to be Stephen's friends. They'd warned her to be careful. The assassins were already in the country and preparing to attack. The Wyvern Group's security team had been transferred to the villa, but Kim was still worried. As the night dragged on, she felt like she was being watched. She spent the rest of the hours before dawn staring at Valeria's crib, worried that she would disappear. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Kim contacted Derek. She knew he had ulterior motives, but she could only take a gamble for Valeria's safety. I'll be right over. He arrived in less than an hour. If you have a plan, I'll hear you out, Kim said. Derek laughed. You should have said that sooner. According to my intel, there are a few organizations that have already infiltrated the country. However, they're second-rate and third-rate assassins. Why, you ask? Because the U.S. is famous for being a forbidden territory for foreign assassins and mercenaries. They keep their eye on some of the most dangerous assassins in the world. It would be difficult for them to enter the country undetected, but the situation is different for second- and third-rate assassins. They may not be the best, but they're still capable of carrying out their mission. Of course, I could deal with them for you and take you and your family under my protection. You should hurry and make a decision. If a first-rate assassin slips past the country's watch, even I won't be able to help you." Just as Kim was hesitating, Camilla's alarmed voice sounded from the bedroom. She came running into the living room with Valeria in her arms. A group of unidentified intruders clad in black surrounded them. Derek stood up and faced the hooded intruders. "I'm the successor of the Naylor family in Annapolis. Kim, her daughter, and her mother-in-law are under our protection. If you know what's good for you, then withdraw. I'll look past what happened here today." His subordinates hurried into the room. Both sides stared each other down for a long moment. Finally, the intruder in the lead broke the stalemate. "We'll leave for today, but you won't be so lucky next time." As quickly as they came, they were gone. Kim took Valeria from Camilla's arms and examined her for any injuries. "She's okay," Camilla reassured her. "She fell asleep just as they came in." "You saw what happened," Derek said. "The first group of assassins is already here. More of them will be coming soon. The ones who just came weren't that strong, so my family's name was enough to send them packing. But who knows which group will come next? You should make a decision as soon as possible." Kim hesitated before making up her mind. "Okay, please ensure Valeria's safety. What do you want in return?" Derek grinned. "You can relax. With me here, no harm will come to you or your daughter." Kim had played right into his hands. The calls that she'd received yesterday were from his people pretending to be Stephen's friends. Today's assassination attempt was also his doing. The only thing he needed from her was permission. To her, it was relatively harmless, but to him, it was key to his plan. As soon as Derek got what he wanted, he went to the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation. He'd already prepared for this beforehand. It was a simple task to pull some tricks using the loopholes. It only took him about an hour to transfer the property rights. In other words, he was now the legal representative of both companies. Derek was smug as he took a seat behind the desk in the Wyvern Group's CEO's office. Kim would have never dreamed that her business would become his in the span of an hour. The lawyer standing next to his desk congratulated him. He was the main contributor to the speed at which the rights had been transferred. "It's still too early to celebrate," Derek said. "The two companies belong to me now, but Kim and Stephen were the ones who made them successful. Most of the employees are their people. I have to change them out soon to avoid unnecessary complications." Derek gathered the upper management and held an emergency meeting. Following the meeting's conclusion, all of the higher-ups were fired. That included Jasmine, who presided over both companies' daily operations. Derek had replaced them with his people. Jasmine was baffled when she exited the building. She quickly gave Kim a call. "Kim, what's up with that Derek person? Is he really here to help you?" She had heard about Kim's situation. To help lighten her burden, she'd focused on her work and didn't pay too much attention to what Derek was doing when he arrived in the morning. He'd claimed to have been sent by Kim to help out. Jasmine gave Kim a rundown of what had happened during the emergency meeting. Kim hung up right away and dialed Derek's number. His phone was off. She asked Camilla to contact the hotel where he was staying at. The hotel informed her that he'd already checked out. Kim and Camilla went to the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation. The security guards at the entrance were all unfamiliar faces. It was clear what had happened. "That asshole! I'm going to Annapolis right now to settle the score with that swindler." Kim grabbed Camilla's arm to stop her from storming off. "Wait, don't be impulsive. You can't confront him yourself. In this situation, we can't even protect ourselves. We don't have time for him." Kim was in a very tight spot. Putting aside the two companies, the Cassidy family in Annapolis had cut off ties with her, and Valeria was being mass-targeted by the assassins overseas. "Are we just going to let it go?" Camilla said angrily. We'll talk about this again later. Valeria's more important. Let's go home. News of Derek cheating Kim out of her business spread far and wide in less than a day. Derek didn't care, because the Cassidy family wasn't on her side anymore. They would see the headlines and scroll past them to the next news article. Those who weren't happy with him would only be able to go as far as to criticize him. After obtaining Kim's business, the Naylor family's status had gone up significantly in Annapolis. They were now on par with the LeBlanc family, which had become an imperial family after Dion returned. Derek was also ranked third amongst the youths in the city, but technically, he was first since Dimitri was defeated by Dion and Tien had been keeping a low profile lately after his ranking fell drastically. Only the Beaumont families could come after him. Everyone else didn't dare to provoke him. The Naylor family imitated the Adams family and held a succession ceremony to make his position as successor official. Derek didn't care about his image anymore. He removed his disguise as a humble gentleman and revealed his true colors. He even openly mocked Kim. Kim Cassidy, she's nothing special. She's a widow with a daughter. She had nothing going for her except for the Cassidy family and her business. Her family cut off relations, and her assets are in my hands. I don't need her anymore. Her daughter is just like her father. They were destined for a short life. Neither of them should have been born. Derek was fearless. First, Stephen was already dead. Second, the Cassidy family had announced that they would break off relations with Kim. She was no longer under their protection. Third, the assassins overseas were targeting Valeria. It would only be a matter of time before Kim and Valeria bit the dust. Even if there were people who were dissatisfied with his actions, at most they could only stand on the moral high ground and condemn him. No one would confront him directly for Kim. It didn't take long for Derek's mocking remarks about Kim to spread on the internet. Because of her fame in the business industry, his comments were exceptionally explosive. They instantly became a hot topic. Unscrupulous media outlets seized the chance to hype it up. Kim fumed as she scrolled through the trending headlines on her phone. That hypocrite! Does he not have a conscience? We already have so many problems, and now we have another one on our hands because of him. Victoria heaved a sigh on the couch, but said nothing. Even Valeria was quiet. She wasn't crying or making a fuss, as if she understood the predicament they were in and didn't want to cause any trouble. Miss Kim, what do you plan to do now? Camilla asked. Time is running out. Whoever's coming for us is strong enough to make Euram cautious, Victoria said. The people around us won't be enough. Stephanie had sent their elite subordinate, Dean, to Washington, D.C. to protect them. He was skilled, but he paled in comparison to the Cassidy family in Annapolis. For now, let's hide in the basement, Kim suggested. That's where we hid the last time when Stephen was attacked. It was a secure location in the villa. If we bring enough food and water, we can hide for a month. Things have come to this, so we don't have a choice, Camilla said. I'll bring the food and water down. Derek was unreliable. They were out of options. Hiding in the basement was their only chance for the time being. Camilla gathered a large supply of food and water and moved them into the basement. As soon as they had gotten settled downstairs, the assassins made their move. From the surveillance footage in the basement, Kim saw a large group of intruders rushing into the villa and searching every nook and cranny for them. Camilla was relieved by their timing. We would have been caught if we were 1 minute too slow. We can't let our guard down, Kim said. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on the surveillance. The intruders, who had divided into groups to widen their search, regrouped to report their findings. The leader was confused when there was no sign of anyone inside or outside the villa. Where could they be? The information couldn't have been fake, right? Someone asked. What if Kim and her family aren't here? They have to be, another person said with certainty. Our people were monitoring the vicinity. No one took a step out of the house. I'm 100% sure they're here. As for why we can't find them... He turned around and scanned the interior of the villa. There's probably a basement or some kind of hidden room. Search again. It must be well hidden. Kim grew nervous as she listened in on their conversation through the monitor. The entrance to the basement could be operated with a hidden mechanism in her closet, but the villa was only so big. There were so many assassins. It would only take a few careful loops around the house to find the basement. And with their skill set, they must have encountered situations like these often. It wouldn't be long before they were exposed. The monitor flickered before going white with static. "They found our cameras," Camilla said worriedly. The sound of knocking came from above the basement. One of the assassins pressed his ear to the floor and knocked. "Boss, this place is hollow. This has to be the entrance to the basement." "Pry it open," the leader of the group ordered. Kim, Victoria, and Camilla looked up at the ceiling and then at each other. Their hearts leaped to their throats. From the sounds coming from above, the assassins were using tools to forcefully pry open the floorboards. Once they got the entrance open, it would be over. Just as one of the assassins was working to get the floorboards upturned, someone tapped him on the shoulder from behind. He turned around and was greeted by an unfamiliar face. "Who are you?" "Stephen Adams," the man replied calmly. The assassin's eyes widened. "What? Weren't you dead?" His surprise caught the attention of the other assassins. They all turned around cautiously. Stephen didn't answer his question. "Nor, I'll leave them to you." Nor nodded and charged into the group of assassins like a bolt of lightning. Even Alistair, who was about to reach the Martial Grandmaster realm, had been killed in an instant. The assassins had the advantage in numbers, but with Nor as their opponent, they were like sheep waiting to be slaughtered. He wiped them out in less than 10 seconds, as if he was sweeping the fallen leaves from the sidewalk in autumn. Stephen glanced at the scattered corpses in the room. "Clean up the mess. This is our home. I can't let it get dirty." Nor moved quickly. When he was finished, it was like the assassins had never been here. His gaze fell on the floor. "Do you want to—" "No, let's not bother Kim and the others for now," Stephen said. "We need to find the person behind this. I'll reunite with them afterward. Also, get some people to guard the vicinity of the villa." "Got it." Just like that, Stephen and Nor quietly left the villa. The battle between Nor and the assassins had ended in the blink of an eye. Kim, Victoria, and Camilla hadn't heard anything after the sound of prying abruptly stopping. They were a bundle of nerves as they kept their eyes on the ceiling, waiting for the entrance to fly open at any second. Time passed, but there was no movement upstairs. "What's happening?" Kim asked in confusion. Camilla was also puzzled. "Did they leave? But that doesn't make any sense. They found the basement. Why would they leave without finishing the job? I'll head upstairs and check on the situation." "Okay, be careful." Camilla quietly crawled out of the basement and poked her head out. There was no one in the room. It looked exactly as it did before they hid in the basement. She did a quick search of the house. There was no sign of the intruders. "Miss Kim, you can come upstairs. There's no one here." Kim could sense the shift in atmosphere as she looked around her room. The murderous aura in the air had disappeared. Why had the assassins left so suddenly? Was it because of Stephen? But how was that possible in his condition? Shortly after leaving the villa, Nora received a message from Aston. "Mr. Adams, Aston just sent an update. Derek Naylor stole your wife's assets, including the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation." Stephen frowned. "Is that really true?" "Yes, it's all over the internet." Noor held out his phone to show him Derek's public mockery directed at Kim. He'd cheated her out of her assets, and he'd even confessed to his crime. "Ask Aston to investigate immediately. I want Derek's current location in 10 seconds. Noor contacted Aston. He sent the location over in less than 5 seconds. Derek was at the Royal Manor. "A member of the Imperial family would never be able to afford a house like that. It looks like he's living it up after taking Kim's assets. Noor, come with me to Annapolis. We're taking everything back." At this time, a banquet was being held at the Royal Manor. Derek was the organizer. After taking Kim's business, the Naylor family had rapidly risen up the ranks. His position as the successor had been made official, and he was ranked first among the youths in the city. Derek was at the center of attention with everything going his way, but he felt like it wasn't enough, so he decided to host a cocktail party at his new house and invite his friends. The second they arrived, they started flattering him. "You're impressive, Derek. You took over Kim's business so easily. From now on, I'm making you my role model." But didn't he want to marry Kim? What are you talking about? With his status, why would he marry someone like her? He's crafty and has the skills to show for it. We can learn a thing or two from him. Derek was smug as he took in the compliments. He held out his glass for a toast. "Let's enjoy another round of drinks to celebrate. To be honest, it was the Cassidy family who wanted me to marry her. If it weren't for them, I would have never bothered with a woman with a burden." "She's not worthy of you," his friend echoed. "Is she trying to cling to you now that she's fallen to the bottom? That's just wishful thinking." The crowd burst into laughter. "By the way, you took Kim's business and announced it to the public. You're all everyone's talking about these days. With such a high profile, aren't you worried?" Derek snorted. "What's there to worry about? Having Kim as my blind date tarnished my reputation back then. So, as compensation, I took the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation. What's wrong with that? It's not accurate to say that I cheated her out of her business. It's what I deserve." A voice drifted into the room from outside the door. "Is that so? It seems like there's no limit to your shame. Come out and pay for what you've done with your life." Someone was demanding for Derek to come out and pay for his crimes with his life during an extravagant banquet that he was hosting. Whoever it was must be tired of living. "I am shameless," Derek admitted. "What are you going to do about it? If you have the courage, then stop hiding and show yourself." In the past, the city had called him a humble gentleman for his modest and upright personality. But now, he was ranked first among the youths, and his successor position had been secured. In addition to taking over the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation, his status had gone up significantly. It wasn't necessary to hide behind a facade anymore. People were calling him a hypocrite now, but that didn't matter. With his influence, no one would be brave enough to confront him to his face. They were at his beck and call. For example, the Addams family had paved their road to success with more deaths than they could count, but no one cared about their gruesome methods. They only remembered their glory and selectively forgot their dark history. The door opened and two men walked into the room. Nor was in the front. Stephen was behind him. No one here had seen the Northern Guardian of the palace before, but many of them had seen Stephen. They paled when he came into view. It was well past midnight, and for a moment they weren't sure if he was a ghost. But what they were certain of was that the look in his eyes sent a chill down their spines. As for the man in the lead, he didn't look familiar, but the aura he emitted turned the once lively atmosphere into one of oppression. Chaos erupted among the crowd. They were convinced that Stephen's ghost was here to take revenge. "He's holding a grudge even in death. If you're looking for Derek, he's over there. I've never done anything to slight you." The panicked crowd blocked Derek's view. Frustrated, he squeezed past his friends to the front to see what was going on. He was shocked to see Stephen. "How are you alive?" he blurted. "Didn't you die?" The four great generals had held a funeral for Stephen 2 days ago. The funeral was so grand that the entire procession had been aired on TV. Derek had seen Stephen's body with his own eyes before it was cremated. His ashes were stored in an urn, and the four great generals had buried it at the western border. Stephen was dead. That much was a fact. The only possibility was that this Stephen was a ghost. He was already terrifying when he was alive, but he was horrifying after death. "I'll let you guess whether I'm a human or a ghost." Stephen walked up to Derek with a smile and slapped him across the face. "Does it hurt?" Derek touched the side of his face where he'd been slapped. "It hurts." He suddenly realized that the Stephen in front of him wasn't a ghost. He was a living and breathing human being. His face stung, and Stephen's hand had been warm, not cold. Most importantly, He had a reflection. These signs were evidence that Stephen was here in the flesh. Derek still found it unbelievable. How are you alive? He looked down at Stephen's legs. And how am I able to walk? Stephen finished. But Derek didn't care about the answer. The point was that he was alive. The commander-in-chief wasn't dead, and he wasn't disabled. If this got out, the world would panic. Derek took a step back. The Stephen who could walk and talk was like a living nightmare. Do you think I wasn't a threat after I was injured? Those who harm my family will never be able to get away from me. You should know why I'm here better than anyone else. Derek shrank back from the chilling look in Stephen's eyes. He glanced at the man standing next to Stephen, but he wasn't much better. He was just as terrifying. Derek was ranked first among the youths, but he wasn't confident that he could survive a fight with Stephen's companion. The gap between them was much too big. You can't kill me. The whole world knows that the military held a funeral for you. You being alive proves that you're a traitor. Your name was cleared 2 days ago, but that's invalid if you're not dead. I think you know better than me what the new commander is like. If he finds out you're alive after the funeral, what do you think he'll do? Derek regained his confidence when Stephen didn't say anything. He continued. Kylan will kill you one more time for the sake of the country's reputation. And your wife, daughter, and mother will no longer have a place in the U.S. He didn't notice Stephen's expression darkening by the second. Derek had used an underhanded trick to scam Kim out of her assets. To top it off, he was mocking her in public and bragging about his crime. And now, he was threatening him. To Stephen, Derek was a dead man from the moment he plotted against Kim. You also know that I'm ranked first in the city, and I have a chance to become Kylan's subordinate. It won't be hard for me to contact him, on account of the fact that I've already taken over the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation. I'll give you a chance. If you leave now, I'll pretend nothing happened. Derek wasn't lying. He would contact Kylan if he wanted to. Kylan had been planning to recruit Stephen's troops, but because of multiple setbacks, he'd set his sights on other promising youths instead. For example, Derek, who was ranked first among the youths in Annapolis, was someone who had caught his eye. If Kylan wanted to consolidate his position as the commander-in-chief, his 4 students were far from being enough. He needed more talented members among his troops. Youths like Derek, who were skilled and had a promising future, became his targets. It wasn't an exaggeration for Derek to brag that he could contact Kylan whenever he wanted. To his surprise, Stephen didn't back down. Sure, I fully support your decision to contact Kylan. Tell him that I'm not dead. I've returned to the U.S., and I'm still guilty of betraying the country. Tell him to bring his people and arrest me. You should have Kylan's number, right? Take out your phone and call him. Ask him to come over. Derek hesitated. Stephen was much too calm for someone who was at a disadvantage. He did indeed have Kylan's number, but he didn't dare contact him. Many people were scared of Kylan's hot-tempered personality, including him. Moreover, Stephen's condition was still unclear. He had recovered to the point where he could walk around, but it wasn't certain that he'd made a full recovery. If Derek could scare Stephen off by threatening him with Kylan's contact details, that would be evidence of his condition. Then he could contact Kylan and provide him with useful information that would earn his appreciation. Kylan did think highly of him, but he was surrounded by competitors. There were many people who were more talented than him in the city. They had yet to show themselves, so he couldn't lose this opportunity. Stephen, don't be so full of yourself. Do you really think I won't report this to the commander? I don't care how you recovered, but you're still no match for him. He defeated you once, and he can do it again. I'm giving you a chance. Don't be stupid. If he finds out that you're alive and stirring up trouble in the country, he won't let you off. Is that so? You have a talent for threatening people. It's good that you know how to be afraid. Derek pointed at the door. Get the hell out of here and run as far as you can. Stephen nodded. Okay. Derek only had 1 second before his relief was replaced with trepidation. Stephen glanced at his companion. Nor, I'll leave this to you. Understood. The man, Noor, cracked his knuckles as he walked straight up to him. Derek's confidence faltered from his piercing gaze. What are you planning to do? Let me tell you, I'm ranked first in this city. You're not my match. His last words were barely audible. Then show me what you're capable of, Noor challenged. He didn't give Derek a chance to respond before striking. He moved so fast that no one in the room except Stephen could see his attack. In less than 10 seconds, Derek's body was on the ground, lifeless. The crowd looked on in fear, worried that their turn would be next. Stephen's cold gaze swept over them. I suggest you all think twice before plotting against my family in the future. He had them use Derek's name to inform the newly appointed higher-ups of the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation of another emergency meeting. It was late at night, but they couldn't refuse Derek's order because they were his trusted subordinates. All of you are fired, Stephen announced in the conference room. What right do you have to fire us? One of Derek's subordinates shouted. Where's Mr. Derek? We want to talk to him. You can't, because he's dead. Stephen slammed his hand on the table. It cracked and split in half. From now on, the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation will belong to me. Anyone who can't accept it will end up like this table. Derek's subordinates took out their phones to contact him, but none of their calls were answered. Are you trying to call Derek? Stephen placed a phone on the half of the table that was still standing. This is his phone. Someone tried to call Derek again. The phone on the table rang. Given Derek's martial arts, it wouldn't have been easy to take his phone away from him. If it was on the table, then it was proof that Stephen's claims were true. Derek was dead. Some of Derek's more well-informed subordinates made a call and inquired about the matter privately. It was like Stephen had said. Derek's death was confirmed. Early the next morning, a certain piece of news circulated across the city. The youth ranked first in Annapolis, Derek Naylor, had died during the banquet at Royal Manor last night. And the newly appointed upper management of the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation had all resigned. Derek's trusted subordinates appointed the higher-ups who had taken over Jasmine's position to inform Kim of the changes to the upper management. He found Kim at the Wyvern Group the next morning and handed over a document. Miss Kim, I've taken care of other procedures. Once you sign the document, the Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation will be yours again. Jasmine snatched the equity document from his hands and carefully looked it over. He was telling the truth. Kim had her doubts. Derek had put in so much effort to come up with an elaborate scheme to take over her business. Why would he give it back to her after one night? Seeing that Kim was hesitating, Derek's subordinate urged her to sign the document. Please sign it. If you don't, this will be the end for me. Stephen's hellish threat last night in the conference room had scared him senseless. He'd been instructed to change the legal representative of both companies before 8 in the morning. If he failed, the consequences would be dire. Kim didn't know if he was being dramatic or serious, but she didn't want to drag things out. She flipped through the document to check for anything suspicious. There was nothing wrong with it, so she signed her name. The Wyvern Group and Tanith Corporation had been returned to her. Kim tried to get the man to tell her what was going on, but he refused to speak. He hurried out of the room as soon as the document was signed. Who could be helping me in secret? Does that matter? Jasmine said. What's important is that your business has returned to its rightful owner. Your secret helper might be some chivalrous man who couldn't stand injustice and took matters into his own hands. Kim gave her an unimpressed look. I don't think so. At an ancient residence in Annapolis, an elderly man was in disbelief after hearing his informant's report. The assassins from overseas mysteriously disappeared? Yes, it could mean that someone is protecting Valeria behind the scenes. That's not possible. Stephen is dead, and Kylan has transferred his troops to the border. There's no one capable of protecting her. The Cassidy family in the city has cut ties with Kim. They wouldn't risk their family to protect her. Investigate the people around them. Maybe they've hired someone. The elderly man's informant left to investigate, while he fell into deep thought. Strange. There were no signs of anyone lurking around them. Who could have gotten rid of the assassins? This can only mean one thing. There's someone out there who's much stronger than the assassins from overseas. He turned to his subordinate. I don't know who's helping them in the dark, but Valeria has to die. Contact the assassin organization overseas and increase the reward. It's 1 billion right now, right? Raise it to 10 billion, or 100 billion could work too. His subordinate swallowed nervously. That much? Why? Are you afraid I can't afford it? Have you forgotten who I am? I'm the head of our organization. We don't lack money. The elderly man was the leader of Halcyon's syndicate, Jameson Chevalier. After the huge increase in the reward, it wasn't just the underworld overseas that became chaotic. Even the underworld organizations in the United States became restless. That included ancient factions that rarely got involved in worldly matters. A bounty of 100 billion was simply irresistible. The world was once again in turmoil after a short period of peace. Jameson was satisfied with the reaction. He believed that Stephen's daughter would soon turn up dead. Aston was monitoring the underworld organizations overseas. Mr. Adams, the reward is increased to 100 billion. Both the reward and the origins of the assassination order came from the United States. That's evidence that the mastermind is in the U.S. It hasn't been easy to track down clues even with the Palace's network. He's more influential than the Adams family. Keep an eye on the situation. I'll let you know as soon as I find another lead, Aston said. Stephen ended the call and put his phone back into his pocket. After I find out who he is, I'll avenge everyone who sacrificed themselves for me. Eventide, Mateo, the 8 deities of Hawthorne Society, Yanis, the Golden Triangle of New York City, and the others. Too many innocent people had died for him. He hadn't been able to recover in time, and he could only watch as they were killed off one by one in front of him. The mastermind hiding in the shadows was behind their deaths. He would kill him with his own hands and avenge his people. Stephen clenched his fist and threw a punch at a huge boulder. He and Noor were standing on a cliff near the beach. The boulder toppled over the edge and plunged into the ocean below. When it came in contact with the ocean's surface, a deafening explosion echoed over the sea. The wave rose high into the sky before crashing back down, setting off another series of waves. Noor was stunned by the impact. You've fully recovered, and you're much stronger than before. If you and I fought, I wouldn't be able to last more than 5 moves. He hesitated, not sure if he should ask Stephen the question he'd been wondering about. Devil Hall was shrouded in mystery, and it hadn't been easy for the palace to investigate them. The only information they'd obtained was that Devil Hall spent 6 long years developing and modifying a lethal poison to use against Stephen. It had penetrated his internal organs, and he had almost died. But not only did he survive, he'd miraculously recovered. Noor still had a hard time wrapping his head around it. He decided to be upfront and just ask, Mr. Adams, how did you recover and increase your strength? It hasn't been that long since you were poisoned. Stephen turned to look at him. He laughed at the curiosity that was written all over his face. It's because of the cultivation technique that the priest taught me. Ever since I started cultivating the technique, I've had a feeling that it was specifically designed for me. It didn't take that long for me to get to the 8th level, but I couldn't break through after that. Noor had heard about Stephen's past, but he didn't know much about the mysterious priest. He only knew that the priest had a deep connection with Hellcrown Palace. He'd played a significant role in Stephen becoming the Grand Palace Master. You should already know what happened next, Stephen went on. I took down the Alliance and Devil Hall and won the war. Noor nodded. Your technique is one of a kind. Why couldn't you break through after you reached the 8th level? Does the 9th level have a specific requirement? There's a lot I still don't understand about the technique, Stephen admitted. Back then, I knew even less than I do now. It wasn't until I was poisoned and after my duel with Kylan that I realized that the essence of the 9th level lies in resetting your cultivation. To break through, giving up your current progress is necessary. That's what happened to me when I was poisoned. Does a technique like that really exist? Nor asked. Yeah, but if you think about it, it's not as strange as it sounds. When you reach the 8th level, you're already considered invincible. It wouldn't be easy to give up your hard-earned progress. But if you don't give it up, you won't be able to break through. To put it another way, reaching the top requires sacrifices. A direct path to the peak doesn't exist. Noah's martial arts were at the pinnacle of the martial path, so it wasn't hard for him to grasp the mechanics of the technique. I understand now. It's like how a caterpillar has to break through a cocoon before becoming a butterfly. That's right, Stephen said. Actually, the 9th level isn't all there is to the technique. There's a 10th level. The priest told me that if I could refine the technique until the end, its power would be enough to destroy the heavens and earth. He said I only needed to reach the 8th level. Nor couldn't believe it. There was a 10th level. The 9th level alone was already impressive. Stephen grinned. I've already comprehended the 10th level. The priest didn't teach me, so I had to learn it myself. Nor was thoroughly shell-shocked. He'd always prided himself on his martial arts, but he was nothing compared to Stephen. If the 10th level could really destroy the heavens and earth, what realm was Stephen at? The Divine Grand Master realm? Devil Hall's poison won't have an effect on me again, Stephen said confidently. I've gained immunity to the most lethal poisons in existence. That's great. At your level, Kylan wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike from you, and he's known as a madman of martial arts. Yeah, Kylan is skilled, but I could have won that duel even when I was poisoned. I lost to him on purpose. Now that I've broken through to the 10th level, I could win in one move. I knew it, Nora exclaimed. He sounded more excited than Stephen. Kylan thinks he's superior to you. He even wants to take down the palace to prove it. Kylan had been repeatedly requesting the Supreme Leader to give him permission to ruin the palace, but he was rejected every time. Naturally, Hellcrown Palace was aware of his attempts. Stephen had instructed them to leave Kylan and not treat him like an enemy. As for Kylan, he didn't stay idle after the Supreme Leader turned down his request. He spent his time spying on the palace. Hellcrown Palace has 5 guardians, Kylan explained to his students. Among them, the Northern Guardian has the highest cultivation base. He's reached the pinnacle of martial arts. He can take down a martial grandmaster in a single move. He was eager to test the Northern Guardian's skills. He's the second person I've ever wanted to fight after Stephen. But the palace is a mystery, Raksha said. No one knows where to find their members. They come and go without a trace. How are we supposed to find this Northern Guardian? He's out there somewhere, so we have a chance. According to my information, he's not inferior to Stephen. If I defeat him and take him under my command, he'll be a valuable asset to our troops. I understand. I'll try to track him down. Constant hurried into the room. An elderly man is here to see you, Mr. Gale. Not just anyone can meet our teacher, Kingsley scolded. I know, but he's not an ordinary person. He has the aura of a martial arts expert. If he's here to demand an audience with Mr. Gale without using honorifics, I think he might be someone important. Constant is right, Kylan said. Follow me outside. Let's see who he is. The 5 of them left the mansion and went to the gates. An elderly man was standing by the entrance with his hands behind his back. His hair was white, and he donned a gray suit. It was James Chevalier, the leader of the Halcyon Syndicate. Kylan was surprised to see him. It's been a long time, Mr. Chevalier. How have you been? He glanced back at his students. This is my teacher, he introduced. His students looked at each other. They'd never met his teacher before. Jameson gave Kylan a once-over, looking satisfied. I'm proud of you, Kylan. You defeated Stephen in a duel and became the commander-in-chief. It's all because of your guidance, Kylan replied modestly. I did teach you, but you couldn't have gotten this far without hard work. You're from a prestigious family. You can't be below an illegitimate son like Stephen. With his family background, he doesn't deserve the commander position. Excuse me, Raksha interrupted. Stephen's not a commoner. He's from the Addams family, the #1 Beaumont family in the country. Jameson fixed her with a glare. Raksha lowered her gaze, too afraid to speak any further. Kylan interjected and waved his students over. Mr. Chevalier, these are my 4 students. The 4 of them greeted Jameson politely. No need for formalities. Your students are talented, Kylan. You've taught them well, but... He looked at Raksha briefly before addressing all 4 of them. Do you really think that the Addams family is a prestigious family? To people like us, they're commoners. They exchanged glances. They already knew that Kylan was from a faction that was far above the Addams family, but they didn't know the details. Jameson's claims were hard to believe, but there was no reason for him to lie. Just how powerful were they? Since ancient times, there has been a saying that one can't be poor for more than 3 generations, and one can only be rich after 3 generations. Our family is already 18 generations old. Jameson ignored the shock on their faces and continued. When I found out that Stephen took the position of Commander-in-Chief, I didn't agree with it. A member of our family can't be compared to a commoner. So that's why you kept telling me to challenge Stephen to a duel, Kylan said. That's correct. I wanted to prove to the world that only a descendant of our family is worthy of sitting in the commander's seat. Stephen used to turn down your requests, but the one time he accepted, you won and proved yourself. They say that even though Stephen is an illegitimate son, he's still a member of a Beaumont family. But that doesn't mean anything, because, to us, they're all commoners. Kylan agreed. We're an aristocratic family that's been around for thousands of years. The Addams family's only existed for a mere 1,000 years. Raksha couldn't contain her curiosity. Can you tell us about your family? The aristocrats are beyond your imagination, Jameson said. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Kylan is invincible? The 4 of them nodded. Jameson chuckled. He's actually only slightly above average in our family. There are at least 10 members whose martial arts are more advanced. They were dumbfounded by the revelation. They'd never encountered anyone who was stronger than Kylan. Their respect for him reached its peak when he defeated Stephen during their duel. They had started to believe that no one could compare to their teacher. But they existed, and there were at least 10 of them. The teacher they'd always thought of as invincible was only slightly above average. They couldn't even begin to imagine the world Kylan and Jameson were from. Despite congratulating Kylan for his victory against Stephen, Jameson knew that it wasn't a fair duel. The outcome was a result of a meticulously thought-out plan. The Alliance cooperated with Devil Hall, not because of Silas, but because of Jameson's manipulation behind the scenes. Devil Hall was wary of getting on the aristocrats' bad side. When the left envoy of light didn't hesitate to sacrifice his life to poison Stephen, it was Jameson who'd persuaded them to act. After Stephen confronted the Addams family, Kylan suggested a duel at the opportune moment. Jameson had set up an ambush nearby, and they'd interfere during a decisive moment to make Stephen lose. Jameson was patient and cunning. Compared to the Addams family outright giving Johann the advantage after he was defeated by Stephen the first time, Jameson worked in secret, planning out each move carefully. Stephen wasn't qualified to be the commander-in-chief. Although Kylan was only slightly above average, he was a member of an aristocratic family. He deserved the position. For various reasons, the aristocrats have been living a reclusive life and shied away from the affairs of the secular world. War and strife were frequent, but they didn't interfere unless it affected them directly. After a prolonged period of time in seclusion, most of the world had forgotten the existence of the aristocrats. Like Hellcrown Palace, which had recently made a groundbreaking appearance, the public saw the aristocrats as a legend. Several aristocrats were dissatisfied with this label, including Jameson. He established the Halcyon Syndicate to get involved in the outside world with a cover and developed his organization in secret. Next, he sent a middle-ranking member of the family outside to prove the strength of the aristocrats. There were 2 reasons to why Jameson would have decided to send his slightly above-average student as opposed to a more skilled member. 1, It would avoid attracting the attention of the other aristocrats. And 2, an average skill set was more than enough to sweep the outside world. Therefore, Kylan became the representative of the aristocrats, and he did not disappoint. He was ruthless on the battlefield. He left a trail of slaughter in his wake and instilled a sense of fear in the enemy. The world saw him as a god of hell. According to the original plan, Kylan should have established his authority in the outside world through battle and become famous for being at the peak of the martial path. But at that moment, Stephen appeared. He became the commander-in-chief through talent and hard work. But to Jameson, he was an obstacle who intercepted Kylan's success halfway and seized his position. And so, Jameson came up with another plan to make Kylan the commander-in-chief. As a student and member of an aristocratic family, he couldn't lose his position to a commoner. In the outside world, it was rare to encounter a grandmaster. Martial grandmasters were even rarer. They were like priceless treasures. The Adams family considered Castile their pillar because he was a martial grandmaster. But among the aristocrats, grandmasters were relatively common. A majority of Jameson's students were grandmasters. As for Jameson himself, he'd reached the peak of the martial grandmaster realm. In the outside world, there was a saying, "Those below the grandmaster realm are nothing more than insects." Among the aristocrats who lived in seclusion, there was another saying, "There are as many grandmasters as there are dogs." The aristocrats were far more capable than the outside world. Kylan came from an aristocratic family, and it would be a disgrace if he remained second place below Stephen. He was the representative of the aristocrats. He had an image to maintain. After Kylan became the commander-in-chief through interference in the shadows, Jameson still didn't feel secure. When Stephen's death was confirmed through the grand funeral held at the western border, he issued an assassination order for Valeria. She was only a child, but she was Stephen's daughter. There was no telling what kind of person she would grow up to be. There was a risk that she could become a replica of her father and be just as terrifying. Ending Valeria's life early would prevent future complications. Jameson had carried out his plans behind Kylan's back. And Kylan was none the wiser. He continued to think that he'd won the duel against Stephen with his own strength. "Mr. Chevalier, why did you visit all of a sudden?" Kylan asked after exchanging a few pleasantries. Jameson had established the Halcyon Syndicate, but the outside world didn't know that he was the founder, including Kylan. He only had a vague impression of the organization. To Kylan, Jameson's sudden appearance outside his mansion was the first time setting foot in the outside world. Jameson patted Kylan's shoulders with a smile. "It's nothing serious. You becoming the commander is worth celebrating. I came to personally congratulate you." Jameson was a superb actor. His talent for acting had even fooled his own students for many years. Kylan was thrilled that his teacher had come all the way here just to congratulate him. "Thank you, but it's a shame that I couldn't become the only commander-in-chief." "You worry too much. Stephen's dead. You are the only commander. People will naturally forget the achievements of a loser." "I don't think it'll be that easy. What I don't understand is why there are still so many people who think that Stephen is qualified to be the commander, when I defeated him in a duel in front of all the upper-class families in Annapolis. Even those overseas feel the same way." When Stephen admitted defeat during their duel, the public was divided into two factions. Half of them supported Kylan, while the other half remained on Stephen's side. Even after he launched several successful sneak attacks on their enemy, there were still people who thought he was inferior. What's more, the hostile forces overseas had sent their people to kill Stephen off right after the duel. They were afraid of someone who'd lost their ability to fight on the battlefield more than him, who was perfectly capable of wiping them out. Those who were on Stephen's side claimed that Kylan had intentionally challenged him at a disadvantageous moment. On that day, Stephen had gone through multiple battles, especially the fight with the 100 Grand Masters, before Kylan arrived. No matter how strong he was, it would have taken a lot out of him. Kylan's decision to challenge Stephen to a duel at that very moment had given him the upper hand. Unbeknownst to the public, to people like them, they could take down numerous grandmasters without breaking a sweat. "Idiots wouldn't understand the battle between true martial artists," Jameson sneered. This is a world where the strong prey on the weak. Fairness doesn't exist, only opportunities. The winner will always be the winner, and the loser will always be the loser. That's all there is to it. If anyone challenges your position, then use your fist to correct their misconception. Unfortunately, Stephen's dead, Kylan said. If he were alive, I could have challenged him to another duel and shut everyone up. I'm afraid the chance is long gone. It's impossible for Stephen to come back to life. Remember, Kylan, in a fight, the only option is to win. Every battle is a fight to the death. The loser must be killed. I understand, Kylan answered respectfully. All right, I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving first. Kylan and his students said their goodbyes and watched Jameson leave. He'd come and left in a hurry. Kylan had a feeling that he wasn't just here to visit him. The aristocrats were a reclusive family. The world's most prized cultivation techniques, ancient medicine manuals, or gold, silver, and jewelry were nothing special to them. Kylan couldn't figure out what could be so important in the outside world that had made Jameson come out of seclusion to pursue it. He couldn't make sense of it, so he didn't dwell on it. Jameson's visit proved that the aristocrats valued his position. That was enough for him. Jameson hurried out of view after leaving Kylan's mansion and dialed a number. Mr. Hahn, I need to confirm with you one more time. Is Stephen really dead? Silas had repeatedly implied to the Alliance that he was the reason why Devil Hall was willing to cooperate with him, but he never told the details. Jameson had played a key role. Silas knew that he was being used as a chess piece, but what did it matter? As long as he could take Stephen down and complete the grand scheme that the 40 Alliance countries had failed to achieve 6 years ago, becoming a chess piece was worth it. Please rest assured, Mr. Chevalier. He was hunted down by every prisoner from the prison of fiends in the desert. His closest subordinates held a funeral for him not too long ago. His death has been confirmed. Good. I'm satisfied with your performance. If you maintain our cooperation, I promise that before long, your grand plan will be realized. Thank you for your support. Next, I need you to confirm Stephen's daughter's death, Jameson instructed. If the roots of the weeds weren't removed, they would sprout again in the spring. Complete annihilation was the method to success. At this time, Stephen received a call from Aston. Mr. Adams, I've found a lead. I sent my subordinate to investigate the assassination order. The clues lead back to someone in Annapolis. You actually know who she is. That piqued Stephen's curiosity. Who is it? It's Laurel Phoenix, the head of the Adams family's wife. She's issued 2 assassination orders targeting your daughter. Stephen was surprised to hear that Laurel was behind it. Although she held a high status and had a prestigious position, even with the Adams family's influence, it wouldn't be enough to stir up trouble in the underworld overseas. There had to be someone behind her. Stephen's speculation was correct, although he didn't have concrete evidence yet. Jameson was a man of character. His every move was calculated beforehand. Every time he plotted against Stephen, he would use someone else as a cover-up. Previously, he'd borrowed Silas and Devil Hall's help. This time, he'd used Laurel to issue the 2 assassination orders. Coincidentally, she was distraught over her son's death and hated Stephen to the bone. When Jameson contacted Laurel, the 2 of them immediately struck a deal and came to an agreement. Laurel was willing to provide the finances and issue the orders. She was desperate to kill off Stephen's family and avenge Johann. It's hard to imagine that she has this much influence, Aston said. It's not her, Stephen replied. Mr. Chevalier is behind her. If my guess is correct, he's using Laurel as a cover. He's giving orders behind the scenes. I'll investigate deeper and get back to you. Okay, but don't alert Laurel. Nora and I will go see her in person. At a mansion a few miles away from Annapolis, Laurel was pacing back and forth, waiting for her guests to arrive. According to Jameson's instructions, she'd provided financial support, issued an assassination order, and stirred up a storm in the underworld overseas. With Valeria's death, she would have avenged her son, Johann. But when the assassins infiltrated the country, not only did they fail to kill Valeria, they mysteriously disappeared. Since then, Laurel couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that gnawed at her. She'd recently issued a second assassination order, but she wasn't as confident as the first time. It had already been a few days, but there was still no news. Laurel asked her maid if there were any updates from the assassin organizations overseas. "No, I haven't heard anything from them." "What's going on? Didn't they say that these assassins were pros who'd been hiding for decades? It's been a few days, but there's still no sign of them. I spent so much money, and I've put in so much effort. This time, I have to succeed. If Stephen's daughter doesn't die, my heart will never be at peace. He killed my son, so I'll kill his daughter and let him have a taste of what it feels like to lose a family in the afterlife." An elderly man stepped through the door. "Miss Laurel, there's no need to be concerned. Stephen's daughter's death is secured. The organization has promised that the assassins are elites. The outcome has already been decided." Laurel finally calmed down when Jameson arrived. From his confident tone, he was clearly optimistic about these assassins. They would infiltrate the country, kill Valeria, and return overseas. It would be that simple. "If that's what you believe, then I'll trust you. However," Laurel recalled the previous assassination attempt's failure. "Do you know what happened to the assassins from last time? It's like they vanished into thin air." Jameson didn't know what was going on either, but he couldn't let Laurel know that. He gave her a random excuse. "There's a possibility that Kim hired several martial arts experts to protect her family. She is the adopted daughter of the Cassidy family in Annapolis. They're ranked third in the country, so it would be difficult for them to find these people in her secret." Laurel didn't doubt him. "What about this time?" "Didn't I tell you? Valeria's death is secured. This batch of assassins is the best in the field. Remember when Warhawk's 30th leader was assassinated and they killed the culprit? He was a scapegoat. These assassins were behind it. They've been in hiding ever since. Warhawk hasn't been able to do anything against them, because they haven't shown themselves in decades." Laurel sucked in a breath. Warhawk was known for being the strongest country in the world, and yet these assassins had played them like fools. "I see why you believe in them so much. There's one thing I'm curious about. You're an aristocrat. Why are you paying so much attention to Stephen and his family?" From her brief interactions with Jameson, she'd come to learn of the existence of hidden clans that were superior to the Addams family. Jameson was from one of the top 10 hidden clans, the Chevalier family. The aristocrats like him lived in seclusion because there was nothing worth pursuing in the outside world. Everything here that was considered priceless treasures held no value to them. They were all too common in their world. The Addams family was famed for being ranked first in the country, but the aristocrats could easily crush them. When the assassination order was issued, on the surface, the Cassidy family in Annapolis seemed like they were afraid of the assassins. But in reality, they couldn't risk offending the hidden clans behind the scenes. Urim hated injustice, but he had no choice but to give up on Kim to prevent his family's ruin. Based on Laurel's understanding of the aristocrats and the hidden clans, she didn't think Stephen was worth this much attention. He had nothing to his name besides being the commander-in-chief. "It's true that Stephen himself isn't worth my effort, but anyone who gets in our way will be disposed of," Jameson said. An aura laced with murderous intent filled the air. Laurel shuddered. She recalled that Kylan had challenged Stephen multiple times to a duel before he finally agreed not too long ago. The gears in her brain started turning, and she came to a revelation. "Is it because of Commander Gale?" Jameson smiled. "There's no harm in telling you. Kylan is my student." Laurel's eyes widened. "You're his teacher?" She'd speculated that there was some connection between Kylan and Jameson, but she never would have guessed that they were student and teacher. "Yes, I'm his teacher," Jameson confirmed. "I have many students. Kylan is one of them. He's considered average." He gestured to the 4 young men standing behind him. "These 4 are also my students. They're Kylan's seniors, and they're far stronger than him. Among our aristocratic families, there are many who are stronger than him." Laurel suddenly felt like everything she'd known about the world had been overturned. Kylan had never revealed his background. To the public, he became the general of the army with his martial arts alone. His achievements were incredible, but to the Chevalier family, he was only average. She'd always thought that Johann was the strongest martial artist she'd ever seen, but she had no doubt that even the weakest member of Jameson's family could defeat Johann in one move. In the face of absolute strength, the struggle was futile. The reason behind our strength is a simple concept. Only the strong survive, and those who are strong have mastery over their martial arts. If you know how Kylan rose to the top, you'll naturally understand what I mean. Laurel tried her best to recall Kylan's past experiences. As the wife of the head of the Addams family, she had a duty to pay attention to the powerhouses of the country. She had heard that Kylan had a rough time in the military when he first started out. He'd appeared out of nowhere with no significant background. None of the factions thought highly of him, and they had no desire to be on good terms because of his prideful personality and short temper. Some of the factions intentionally caused trouble for him to chase him away, but Kylan didn't back down. He turned the tables on them and forced them to stand down with his own strength. That was how he'd gotten to where he was today. In hindsight, Laurel found it laughable that Beaumont families had spent 1,000 years relying on connections, finances, martial arts, and so on, just to obtain their current position at the top. Kylan had surpassed all the Beaumont families with his martial arts alone, which was most likely what the aristocrats had taught him. With sufficient proficiency in martial arts, any domain could be infiltrated and crushed behind their heel. It was a simple and crude method. No wonder the aristocrats were so powerful. Do you understand now? Jameson asked, noticing that Laurel was deep in thought. We've been in seclusion for a long time. The world has developed rapidly, and they eventually forgot our existence. You're part of the outside world. Others like you probably think it's too late for us to make a reappearance and keep up with the pace of the era, and will gradually decline in seclusion. Am I right? I suppose they would think that, Laurel said. That's where you're wrong. We've stayed hidden for a long time, but we've maintained our martial arts proficiency and made great progress. The outside world has airplanes, cannons, nuclear bombs, and much more. But that's never been a problem for us. We could crush the outside world all the same. My student, Kylan, is living proof. What do you think, Miss Laurel? What else could Laurel say? She was speechless. Don't think you're superior just because of your so-called #1 family in the country. In front of us, all of you are trash. Laurel swallowed the urge to retort. She couldn't curse Jameson to his face, so she cursed him in her heart. Their discussion was interrupted by a loud bang outside. Then came the sounds of fighting, followed by a voice. Laurel, come out and face the consequences of what you've done. Laurel turned pale. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The moment the intruder threatened the wife of the Addams family, the guards of the mansion moved out. They ran outside. There was a short commotion, and then there was silence. The door to the hall opened, revealing the situation inside. The guards had been wiped out. 2 people walked in. Laurel was startled when she saw Stephen. Her brain short-circuited from the sudden appearance of a dead man. Are you a human or a ghost? Stephen couldn't help but laugh at the fear on her face. Of course I'm a ghost. I died a horrible death, Laurel. My grievances were too great, and even the devil couldn't take it anymore. So he gave me permission to go into the sun and take my revenge. As he spoke, he stepped closer to her. Laurel panicked and pointed at Jameson. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. If you're holding a grudge, you should go to him. He's the one who killed you. Regardless of whether Stephen was a human or ghost, he was someone who she was terrified of. Jameson cursed under his breath when Laurel didn't hesitate to sell him out. But his attention shifted to Stephen in a split second. He was acting like a little kid, pretending to be a ghost to scare Laurel. Putting aside his odd composure, all of the prisoners from the prison of fiends had hunted him down. How was he still alive? You're not dead. Stephen turned to look at him. Oh, so you're Mr. Chevalier. I believe this is our first meeting. Are you surprised to see me?" "You know who I am?" Jameson asked in disbelief. He'd made sure to cover his tracks by using other people to do his dirty work for him. "You were paralyzed after an injury and you lost your martial arts. When you were kicked out of the country, all of your escorts were killed. And Alistair personally hunted you down. You can't possibly be alive." Stephen's recovery was beyond Jameson's imagination. Just now, he'd spoken with confidence when he told Laurel that he was dead. Less than 30 minutes had passed, and here he was, standing before them, alive and well. Stephen's appearance was like a slap to the face. How in the world had he recovered? Jameson turned his attention to the man standing behind Stephen. He could sense a powerful aura coming from him. "I assume someone saved you from Alistair, so you decided to play dead. You even fooled your closest subordinates, the 4 great generals. Is that correct?" "That's correct," Stephen said. "Continue." Jameson's gaze fell on his legs. "You were saved. I can understand that, but how did you recover?" As an aristocrat, Jameson had a deep understanding of ancient medicine. After Stephen was paralyzed, he'd sent his people to assess his condition multiple times. After repeated verification, he'd come to the conclusion that Stephen would never be able to walk or lift a finger again. To be certain, Jameson had reread the medical text several times over. Ancient medicine wouldn't have been enough for Stephen to recover to this extent. Using modern medical technology was even more impossible. "Are you curious?" Stephen asked with a cryptic smile. "We can talk about it later. I'm here to discuss something else." Jameson had a bad feeling. "What is it?" Stephen ignored his question and looked past him at the 4 young men standing behind him. "During my duel with Kylan, it was you 4 who interfered." As soon as Stephen entered the hall, he sensed the 4 familiar auras. They were the same auras he'd felt on the day of the duel. The 4 men were taken aback by the sudden accusation because he was right. That day, when Stephen was gathering his inner energy to prepare for a decisive attack, they'd interfered and changed the outcome of the battle. It had been flawless. They hadn't left behind any traces. But Stephen had somehow seen through their tricks. They prided themselves on their aristocratic family background. They would not admit that a commoner had bested them. Their silence confirmed Stephen's suspicions. "Nothing to say for yourselves? Silence is tacit agreement. You 4 were the ones who interfered. That was quite an underhanded trick you pulled." That got them riled up. They were proud and arrogant members of an aristocratic family. They couldn't tolerate someone from the outside world mocking them. Just as they were about to lunge for Stephen, Jameson interrupted. "That's a load of nonsense. There were thousands of witnesses that day. Kylan defeated you, fair and square. You refused to accept your loss, so you're fabricating a lie that someone secretly helped Kylan gain the advantage. We are aristocrats. We don't need to use underhanded means to deal with outsiders." Stephen's lips curled into an amused smile. This game of pretend was unexpectedly entertaining. Jameson wasn't pleased with his expression. "What's so funny? There was a clear victor and loser. You're the former commander-in-chief. Have you always been a sore loser? Did you have to make up such a lousy excuse?" The more he spoke, the more worked up he got. To commoners, aristocrats were like gods. But the commoner in front of him was bold enough to make accusations and watch the reactions impassively as if he was enjoying a good movie. "You have no shame?" Stephen retorted. "Are all aristocrats like you?" Jameson glared at him. "I know what you're thinking. If you weren't poisoned by Devil Hall and fought several battles before your duel with Kylan, you would have won. Oh, and us pulling those supposed underhanded tricks might have affected the outcome too, right? Aren't those all facts? I hate to break it to you, but I could have won that day. Do you know why I lost?" "Why?" Jameson asked. He had to play along because he would never admit that his students had been the reason for his loss. Stephen grinned. "Because I lost on purpose. I found out that someone was trying to sabotage me, so I lost to Kylan and found the mastermind. He got carried away and revealed himself." Jameson burst into laughter. That's the funniest joke I've ever heard. Why don't you become a comedian? Let me give you some advice. Instead of finding excuses for your failure, work on improving yourself. Truthfully, Jameson knew that Kylan wasn't as good as Stephen. That was why he's resorted to underhanded methods. Kylan's victory wasn't an honorable one, but Stephen claiming to have lost on purpose was a serious insult. Jameson had spent a lot of time planning his scheme. For Stephen to casually claim that he'd deliberately lost was a direct provocation. Is this all the so-called legendary commander-in-chief amounts to? With such a mentality, I'm not surprised that you lost your position. Only those who refuse to acknowledge their defeat and reflect on their shortcomings. Jameson's pompous speech had truly broadened Stephen's horizons. His level of shame was off the charts. As expected of people like you, you keep a straight face even as you're trying to defend yourself to cover up what you did. I really admire you. There aren't many people out there who are as shameless as you. Laurel's jaw dropped. Jameson was Kylan's teacher, and he was from the Chevalier family. He was a godlike existence. Did Stephen eat the guts of an ambitious leopard? Where did he get the courage to mock him like this? Jameson's students couldn't take it anymore. How dare you disrespect our teacher? The first student demanded. You think you can run your mouth because you don't know who we are, the second student said proudly. Then let me tell you our identity. We are from the Chevalier family. Have you ever heard of us? Of course not. You're just a commoner. The third student took over. Remember how you were defeated by Kylan? He's our junior, and his skills are only average. Any of us can take him down. Stephen's eyes gleamed. In his current condition, he could defeat Kylan in one move. So what did that make them? Chevalier family? I'd like to see just how strong you are. Come at me. I'll take on all four of you at once. Laurel was at a loss for words. Wasn't Stephen being too arrogant? She'd spoken to Jameson enough to know that the aristocrats were monstrous. There was no lack of Grand Masters in the aristocratic families. Castile was a martial Grand Master, and he had the ability to dominate a region. But in the Chevalier family, there were too many members who were just like him to count. Even if Stephen was a martial Grand Master, he wouldn't be much of a match for Jameson's students. And he'd lost his martial arts once before, so his cultivation base wouldn't be as good as it used to be. Why couldn't Stephen recognize the aristocrat's strength? Jameson had enough of Stephen's mockery. With his family's authority, no one had the right to question him. Everyone says you're full of yourself. Now I understand what they mean after meeting you for myself. We aristocrats are capable of far more than you could ever imagine. Do you think you're qualified to challenge us just because you're not confined to your wheelchair anymore? Either one of us is enough to kill you. Stephen gave Jameson's students a knowing look. If you're their teacher and Kylan is their junior, that means you're Kylan's teacher. That's right, I am. Then are your martial arts more advanced than Kylan's? It is a given for the student to surpass their teacher, Jameson said. But Kylan has yet to surpass me. Why are you asking me this? Because I want to challenge you. Since all of you think I'm making excuses for losing to Kylan, then I might as well defeat his teacher and prove what I said is true. You said it yourself. You're stronger than your student. Then wouldn't the truth come to light if I beat you? If Stephen were to have another duel with Kylan, he would win. It would be too easy of a challenge. Jameson, on the other hand, brought out his competitive side. Fighting with him would be much more interesting of a challenge. A brief silence filled the room, followed by laughter. From what Jameson's students had seen of Stephen's martial arts, they were only slightly above Kylan's. Jameson had reached the peak of the Grandmaster realm. Stephen was out of his league. You'll have to defeat us first, one of them said. If you can't win against us, what qualifications do you have to challenge our teacher? Jameson's students had reached the intermediate level of the martial Grandmaster realm. Be it their talent or individual strength, they were far superior to Kylan. Kylan had no chance of winning against either one of them. During his duel with Stephen, they had made a rough estimate of Stephen's cultivation base. They concluded that he was slightly stronger than Kylan, but he was still far from being their match. Stephen's combat prowess might have been greatly reduced because he was afflicted by Devil Hall's poison at the time, but he didn't see that as a problem. Even though he'd recovered, he had sustained a serious injury. He couldn't be as strong as before. "In that case, I'll take you four down and then your teacher," Stephen declared. Jameson's students seethed. The oldest of the four was the first to step forward. He charged towards Stephen aggressively. The floorboards cracked and flew up with every step he took. At the intermediate level of the martial grandmaster realm, he could materialize his inner energy in battle. He used his inner energy to grab hold of the floorboards without physically touching them. Laurel watched in amazement. She used to think that Johann was strong, but compared to Jameson's oldest students, they were a world of difference between them. The floorboards shot through the air, heading straight at Stephen at high speed. Stephen didn't move. He stood there with a smile on his face. The other three students thought he was frozen in place after being scared silly. They waited for the floorboards to turn him into meat paste. A split second before the floorboards made contact, they exploded in a shower of dust and obscured their view. Stephen leapt out from the dust, and his fist landed on the oldest student's chest. Blood gushed out from the wound as cracks spread over his skin. He was reduced to ashes. Jameson and his three students were stunned. The oldest student should have been able to defeat Stephen easily. The remaining three students were racked with grief. They rushed towards Stephen from three different directions and released their inner energy. The windows shattered as they ran, and cracks appeared on the floor and walls. The hall seemed to be on the verge of collapse. The students didn't care. They only had one goal, and that was Stephen. Like the oldest student, they had also reached the intermediate level of the Grandmaster realm. Their auras flooded the hall as they unleashed their strongest attacks using their inner energy at Stephen. Laurel scrambled to the corner to avoid collateral damage. Jameson's oldest student had been killed, but he believed that his remaining three students' combined attacks would be enough to take Stephen down. A deafening explosion rang out as three bursts of inner energy were deflected with a sweep of Stephen's arm. They changed directions and struck the three students in the chest. They crashed against the wall and collapsed. Laurel had a hard time processing the scene before her. Four students of the Chevalier family, who were stronger than Kylan, had been wiped out by Stephen alone. He barely moved from his original position. How was he so strong? Wasn't he recently injured? It wasn't just Laurel who couldn't understand. Jameson was probably more shocked than she was. He knew better than anyone just how strong his students were. To outsiders, they were invincible. However, they were killed by a single strike from Stephen. The outcome was unacceptable.